We are recording, we are live. We're going to be having our last class today, the last of 4 classes on colorful profiles. Colorful profiles going through spanning Jewish history and exploring history through stories, through people, and the contributions they've made, the challenges they faced. Today, we're going to have 3 cases of hostages in our history, spanning from all over the centuries. This is obviously a relevant topic. This class was made within the last 12 months, was prepared. So it's obviously the one thing on our mind are all the hostages in Eretz Yisrael still. And our goal with this class is to maybe see how the sages of our past dealt with people who were being taken captive. This was an age-old industry. You need a few bucks, you go to your neighbor, you grab him, you put him in your basement, you say you want him back, you got to pay $100 and you give him back. It was part of the business, just the way life worked back then. So this was a reality that many Jewish communities throughout the ages had to face, and perhaps it will shed some light on our current situation. That is the goal of today's class, to kind of give us some of that perspective. I am going to share my screen, and we're going to get started. Give me 1 second. I want to welcome everyone online. Elizabeth Cohen, yes. My parents actually from Montreal. So joining us from Montreal. So welcome. Ta and Ma, welcome. It's an honor to have you guys with us. Julie Strauss, Julie, welcome. And Noel, welcome. Good stuff. Okay, let's go. So we're going to get started here. Yes, perfect. Nice. Okay. Let me just get rid of this guy, this little schmitchick. I don't know where Dan and Emily are traveling this weekend, but they're going to hear the recording. You can send them regards. They will hear the recording. Yep. Dan is doing better, thank God. Slowly but surely, they say, right? Okay. Yeah, Mike. Perfect. Okay. So we'll open up our student books at page 144. Introduction. Shayla, would you get us started on page 144, please? Introduction to the last class, Heroes and Hostages.
There is little that the Jewish people have not faced in their long history. Having Jews taken captive or held hostage is not a new challenge. Over the course of thousands of years, Jewish communities around the world have grappled with the tragedy of captivity and the difficulties involved in achieving their redemption from captivity. This lesson explores several riveting sagas of major historical incidents of captivity and hostage taking. Drawn from the collective Jewish past, we will learn how Jewish communities navigated the complexity of negotiating with hostage takers and rose to the challenge of redeeming their brethren, often with extreme sacrifice.
Yes, amazing. So what is the greatest mitzvah of all time? What would you say? Saving a life. Give me another mitzvah.
Being alive.
Being alive, saving a life. Give me another mitzvah. What's a great mitzvah to do? Estelle, what's a great mitzvah to do? Elizabeth, yeah, no?
Helping the poor.
Giving tzedakah, helping the poor. Very good. Right? What else? Yes?
Care for the ill.
Care for the ill. We're going to make the case now in text 1 that rescuing a hostage includes all of the above. Saving a life, caring for the ill, feeding the hungry. This encompasses everything. Now, in different stages and different situations, the hostage takers had different, we'll see three cases that we're going to study today. Hostage takers had different wants, different desires, different goals. So sometimes maybe the person's life wasn't so at stake. You'll see the second case we're talking about. His life was not in danger, but he wanted a major ransom. The king at the time wanted a major ransom from the leader of the Jewish community. And we'll see what happened there. But there, the problem wasn't life or death. The problem was money, right? So it depends on the situation which we're going to analyze together. But let's look at text number 1, where Rabbi Yosef Cairo, the author of the Shulchan Aruch, makes the case why Pidyon Shvuin. Pidyon Shvuin is the Hebrew word for redeeming those who are captive, is the greatest mitzvah of all time. Let's see text number 1, Joan, please.
We should start here. Okay, the greatest
Redemption.
mitzvah.
Yeah.
Okay. The redemption of captives takes priority over sustaining the poor and providing them with clothing. There is no greater mitzvah than redeeming captives. If we ignore the redemption of captives, we transgress the following prohibitions. You shall not harden your heart to the needy, from Deuteronomy 15, chapter 15, paragraph 7. You shall not shut out your hand to the needy, which is Deuteronomy 15:7. You shall not stand by when a fellow's life is in danger. That's Leviticus 19:16. And you may not allow a worker to be oppressed ruthlessly. Leviticus 25:53. In neglecting to redeem captives, we also negate the following proactive mitzvot. You shall surely open your hand to your needy fellow. Deuteronomy 15:8. Your brother shall live with you financially. Leviticus 25:36. Love your neighbor as yourself. Leviticus 19:18. Rescue those taken for death. Proverbs 24:11. And many similar statements. If we delay redeeming captives when it is possible to hasten, it is as if we are spilling blood in every added moment.
Wow. This is big stuff, right? So we're laying the case for today's class, saying that in Judaism, the greatest mitzvah, according to Rabbi Yosef Karo, the author of the Shulchan Aruch, the Code of Jewish Law, is to rescue captives. Why? Because it includes all of the above that we just mentioned. What are these above? Let's look at the screen. So we break down, we have a bunch of passages here. You shall not harden your heart. You shall not shut your hand. This is obviously in charity, saving life. You shall not stand by when your fellow's life is in danger. This goes under saving lives. Preventing slavery. You may not allow a worker to be oppressed ruthlessly. These are verses that were just quoted, and we have these four major commandments in the Torah. Charity is a very big deal in the Torah. Saving a life is the biggest deal in the Torah. Preventing slavery. Love your fellows yourself. You know, when Hillel was asked a question, tell me the entire Torah standing at 1 foot, what did he say? Saying 1 foot, it means, how long could you stand on 1 foot? 30 seconds, a minute? If you're Olympian, 5 minutes? I don't know, whatever. So how long? Tell me the entire Torah standing at 1 foot. Give it to me in a nutshell, in an elevator pitch. What did he say? That which you do not want done to you, do not do unto a fellow. Love your fellow as yourself. This is a very big deal, this mitzvah. The entire Torah. Well, and the rest is commentary. Thank you, Estelle. Yes, that was the end of his quote. This is the main thing, and the rest is commentary. So that's a crazy statement. Shabbat, Yom Kippur, Passover is commentary. What's the main thing? Love your fellow as yourself. Very big deal. Yet we see rescuing captives includes all of these mitzvahs combined. Okay. All combined in rescuing captives. Okay, so what we're going to start with today is our first case of the 4 captives. Okay, let's read the introduction, and then I'll give a little bit of a background. Estelle, please.
The first episode of our lesson is the saga of the 4 10th century Jewish sages who were captured at sea by Mediterranean pirates. These sages' experiences of captivity and redemption are also the story of a transitionary moment in the history of the entire Jewish people.
So let's give a little bit of a backstory before the story of the 4 captives. Okay, the story of 4 captives is as follows. In the year 70 CE, the Second Temple was destroyed. There is a debate between scholars. The Jewish belief is 70 CE. Many of the secular historians say it was 69 CE. But a year here, a year there, what's the difference? 70, 69, the Second Temple was destroyed. Okay, what happened when the Second Temple was destroyed? Now, even predating the Second Temple, those of us who joined the last class of decoding the Talmud, we know that the main seat of Jewish study and scholarship and rabbinic authority moved from Israel after the destruction of the First Temple to Babylonia. Babylonia is modern-day Iraq, the Euphrates River, where it's all the way a 2-week journey by foot, 3 weeks journey by foot east into Iraq. Now, when the second temple was built, 70 years after the first one was destroyed, it was a 70-year gap between the destruction of the first and the reconstruction of the second. The Jewish communities, for the most part, remained in Babylonia, in Bavel. And that became, even while the second temple was in Jerusalem, and the Jewish community was reestablishing the Sanhedrin and everything back in Jerusalem, Pumbedisa, Sura, Naharda, all these cities of great Torah scholarship in Babylonia never ceased to exist simultaneously. But the Babylonian scholars were far greater than the Jerusalem scholars. And this idea of Jews keeping two locations of Jewish authority was the reason why Judaism did not die with the destruction of the Second Temple. With the destruction of the Second Temple, the Romans, there was still Jewish presence in Jerusalem even after the destruction of the Second Temple. But now the whole weight of carrying the Jewish teachings and carrying Judaism forward was all on Babylonia. So even fast forwarding 1,000 years, what happened? Babylonia was still the seat of Jewish, even 1,000 years after the destruction of the Second Temple. Now, the Mishnah was written down in the 3rd century. These were the Tanaim. Tanaim were the sages that remained in Israel. They wrote the Mishnah in the 3rd century. They completed the Mishnah by Rabbi Yehuda the Nasi. That means, what is the Mishnah? The Mishnah is the first written book of the oral Torah, of the oral discussions that the sages had, covering every element of Jewish life, of law, of practice, of ethics. There's one tractate in the Mishnah called Ethics of the Fathers. So it's majority, 95% is law and 5% is ethics. So when they finished that, it shifted towards the Amoraim in Babylonia. The next 300 years, the Amoraim in Babylonia were dissecting the Talmud. So the Mishnah. The Mishnah was produced. The Amoraim are the next generation of scholars that compiled the Talmud, the Gemara, which was basically expounding on the Mishnah. That ended at about 500 CE, where the Gaonim took over, and they carried. Once the Talmud was written down, and what happened next? There's still discussion. There still needed to be rulings at the time. What happened? Then the Gaonim took over. That was starting the second half of the millennium, starting about 500 and forwards. So what happened at the time? Every Jewish community they're moving out into the Mediterranean and Spain, Jewish communities in North Africa, the Jewish communities all around there, they were still reliant heavily on Babylonia. Okay, so when did that shift? When did Babylonia stop becoming the center of Jewish authority, Torah law, etc.? Was our story here of the 4 captives. And we're going to learn about it. So not only was this a major event of these 4 captives that turned out, their captives didn't know this. It turned out these were the greatest scholars of their time. They thought they were ordinary people. We'll learn about it. But when they were sold off and branched off to different communities throughout the Mediterranean, what that did was that created, these rabbis created Jewish life and Jewish infrastructure to the extent where it outgrew Babylonia. Until that time, the Jewish communities of the entire area would send money to Babylonia to support the Torah study, would send money to support the Jewish scholars, because without them, we got nothing. After our story, they realized that we're not dependent on Babylonia anymore. We have to support locally because they created it locally. This is a fascinating story. So let's look at okay, so what caused Babylonia to die out? There were 3 main things. There was government persecution in Babylonia of the Jewish people. There was internal conflict between the Babylonian communities, as you know. Look at any synagogue board meeting, there's always an internal conflict. So it happens on a major scale and on a micro scale. Not this, anyway. All right, and the increased numbers of Jews immigrating into the conquered Muslim lands also created, it was basically a mass exodus of the Jews of Babylonia. That's basically what happened. Let's look at text number 2. Which is written by Rabbi Abraham ibn Daoud, which was a great Torah scholar born in 1110. And he writes about this story of the 4 captives. So, Robbie, please, let's read text number 2.
brought about by God that the income of the yeshivot, which used to come from Spain, the land of the Maghreb, Ifriqiya, Egypt, and the Holy Land was discontinued.
Robbie, just pause 1 second. You're gonna get confused with all these names and cities, but don't get confused. The next page has a map which shows the contemporary areas that we're talking about. But there's just 2, 3 cities that are actually relevant to this conversation, but don't get thrown off by these random names and locations. You go ahead, Robbie, sorry.
Following were the circumstances that brought this about. Ibn Rumahis, the commander of the fleet, left Cordoba, having been sent by the Muslim king of Spain, Abd ar-Rahman an-Nasir. This commander of a mighty fleet set out to capture the ships of the Christians and the towns that were close to the coast. They sailed as far as the coast of the land of Israel, swung about to the Greek Sea and the islands therein. Here they encountered a ship carrying 4 great scholars who were traveling from the city of Bari to a city called Sephastin, and who were on their way to a convention. Ibn Rumahis captured the ship and took the sages prisoner. One of them was Rabbi Kushiel, the father of Rabbeinu Chananel. Another was Rabbi Moshe, the father of Rabbi Hanoch, who was taken prisoner with his wife and his son. Rabbi Hanoch, who was then but a young lad. The third was Rabbi Shemariah, then Rabbi Elchanan. And as for the fourth, I don't know his name. These sages did not tell a soul about themselves or their wisdom. The commander sold Rabbi Shemariah in Alexandria of Egypt. Rabbi Shemariah proceeded to Fostat, where he became head of the yeshiva. Then sold Rabbi Kushiel on the coast of Ifriqiya. There the rabbi proceeded to the city of Kairouan, which was then the mightiest of all Muslim cities in the land of the Maghreb, where he became the head of the yeshiva, and where he begot his son Rabbeinu Chananel. The commander then arrived at Cordoba, where he sold Rabbi Moshe along with Rabbi Hanoch. This affair occurred in the days of Rabbi Sharira Gaon, in about 4750 or 990 CE, somewhat more or less.
So here's the summary. I sent you a text, Mike. Just a second. So in the year 990, if you look at the maps, you'll see smack in the middle, there's a city Bari in Italy, right? And you see a little bit south to the west is Sfax. That is a city in Tunisia, right? So these rabbis were traveling from Bari to Sfax. Why were they traveling to Sfax? Because there was a convention. What type of convention? It was called the Hachnasat Kala. Until today, around the world, there's something called Yarchei Kala, which means rabbis from all the areas come together. It happens every summer, by the way. It's going to happen in about 3 weeks in upstate New York, where rabbis from all over the world come and they discuss the major things that the Jewish community is dealing with at the time. This has been going on for, as you see, thousands of years. So there was the Yarchei Kala, Chazat Kala convention happening in Sfax, and these 4 rabbis went from Bari, which by the way which is in Italy. Jews ended up in Italy because after the Roman persecution, after the Roman destruction of the Second Temple, many of them were exiled to Rome, and they ended up in Italy. Now, the issue was also why these communities of Italy could not be in touch with Babylonia is because Babylonia, Italy was under Christian rule at the time, and Babylonia was under Muslim rule. It was impossible. I mean, at those days, it was impossible to crisscross that, right? So these communities, these rabbis on their ship down to Sfax to this convention, they were captured by this guy. What's his name again? Ibn Rumahis. Ibn Rumahis captured these four Jews. Now there's a story that's not in here. It was omitted, but basically their wives were with them. This Ibn Rumahis wanted to violate one of the wives. It describes how she was beautiful. So she actually took her own life. She jumped off the ship. It wasn't just a simple taking. But what happened was Rabbi Shmaryahu was sold to Egypt. Rabbi Chusiel was sold to Caronan in Tunisia. And Rabbi Moshe and his son, Rabbi Hanoch, were sold to Cordoba, Spain, all the way in the west. Now, the fourth one, some people say, no, he says the fourth, he's not sure. Some say that Rabbi Moshe and his son, Rabbi Hanoch, the son was the fourth, because he later ended up being a great sage. But at the time, he was just the son of Rabbi Moshe. Okay. Oh, yes.
According to the map here, they
Yeah.
do have the Holy Land,
Yes,
which looks a lot like Israel.
yes, should be the same
Was
place.
that Jewish at the time, or?
At
was
the
that-
time was not, no. Who was ruling in 990? I'm not sure. Byzantines? Islam? Okay, was it the Mamluks?
I think it's before the Mamluks.
Okay.
Sure.
Yeah. Anyway, okay, but yeah, it was not in the it was not in the Jewish hands, it was on Jewish hands from 70 until 1948. That's the truth. It was not. Go ahead, Mike, yes.
Okay, so I'm a little confused by the text where it says they were sold into a particular place and all of a sudden they're running a yeshiva.
Okay, wait, we're gonna learn it right now.
Oh, okay.
Text 3.
I was wondering if they
That
were
was
sold
just
before
me.
the
Yeah. Who did they have to bribe to get that position, right? We're gonna talk about that right now. Let's see. Text 3 is gonna tell us how they rise to fame, right there. That's the name of the text. Good question, Mike. Hold on. So the evolution of Torah, let's just look here for a second on the screen. So the Tanaim completed the Mishnah in Israel, followed by the Amoraim developed the Talmud in Babylonia. The Gaonim were the halachic authorities across the diaspora. Okay. And then the communities in North Africa, Spain, and Central Europe became independent based on our story. A large part based on our story. They were also, it was hard to get in touch with each other, etc. So let's look at text number 3. Oh, wow. Look at page 151. You'll see a piece of a letter from Reb Husio of Chiron sent to Reb Shemaryahu of Cairo. That's the Shemaryahu that was later sold, right? This letter was preserved in the Cairo Geniza that we spoke about 2 classes ago. Pretty wild, right? These were 2 of the captives from the story. One was in Tunisia, one was in Cairo. And this is an actual letter they found from one to another in the Cairo Geniza, which in and of itself is a fascinating story. Guys, our people are incredible. And we're going to learn about that today. The last story, today's last story, I had shivers, I had goosebumps. Not shivers, I mean goosebumps in a good way. Anyway, text number 3. Ron, please.
He rise to fame. Rabbi Moshe was redeemed by the people of Cordoba, who were under the impression that he was a man of no education. Now in Cordoba, there was a synagogue that was called Knesset,
Midrash.
study gathering hall, where a judge by the name of Rabbi Nathan the Pious was a man of distinction used to preside. Rabbi Moshe was seated in the corner like an attendant, and he rose before Rabbi Nathan and challenged the interpretation Rabbi Nathan had given. When Rabbi Nathan and the students heard Rabbi Moshe's words, they marveled to each other and asked him to explain the law to them. This he did quite properly. Then each of them posed to give him all the difficulties that they had, and he replied to them with his abundant wisdom. Outside the study hall, there were litigants who were not permitted to enter until the students had completed their lesson. On that day, Rabbi Nathan the judge walked out, and the litigants followed. However, he said to them, "I am no longer judge. This man who is readily laughing, and as a stranger is my master, and I shall be his disciple from this day on. You ought to appoint him judge of the community of Cordoba." And that's exactly what they did. The community then assigned Rabbi Moshe a large stipend and honored him with expensive garments and a carriage. At that point, the commander wished to retract his sale. However, the king would not permit him to do so, for he was delighted by the fact that the Jews of his domain no longer needed the people of Babylon. The report of all this spread throughout the land of Spain, and the students came to study under Rabbi Moshe. However, all questions which had formerly been addressed to the academics of Babylonia were now directed to him. The communities of West and East did not resume the sending of gifts to the academies of Babylonia, because those scholars raised many disciples, and the knowledge of the Talmud spread throughout the world.
So Rav Moshe's release in Cordoba caused a real stir in the community. You realize a guy walks in with rags and a beggar just came off a boat that the Jewish people saved and they bought him. Whoa, this is a master. This is a real master. And what that led to, the Jewish community of Cordoba stopped supporting Babylonia, not because they didn't need to. They had everything they needed in town because of him. Now, we know the story from almost the first account. Rabbi Moshe ibn Dawid, which wrote this, Rabbi Abram ibn Dawid, which wrote this last text, was a descendant, was a third generation from this generation. So he knew the story firsthand from the community. The other two, a lot of historians debate the story of the four captives. The other two have similar stories of how they rose to fame. They arrived in town, and they eventually became pillars in the community in Cairo and the community in Tunisia as well. But let's see text. Let's see a little summary here. They kept their status as accomplished rabbis a secret. They knew that if the pirates would find out, they would obviously demand more money, right? So they kept it a secret. And once they kept it a secret, when the secret got out, the pirates are like, whoa. We only paid a regular amount for this guy. He's worth a lot more. But the king at that time said, by the way, the king was the one who dispatched the pirates. This was a whole business. Dispatch the pirates, bring them back, make the money. It was all, So the king at the time said no. They did not let the rabbi go back as a captive under the pirates or to pay more, because he saw that by allowing the Jewish people to have a strong community, they would attract more Jews there, which were good for business, good for commerce. Jewish communities always interact with each other. They trust each other. They take out loans with each other. So therefore, it's good for business to have the Jewish community. And he was right. The Jewish community of Cordoba grew exponentially after 1990, this story where Rav Moshe ended up staying and becoming a leader of the Cordoba community. Let's see text number 4. Students flocked to study under him. Okay, let's see text number 4. Mike, bevakasha.
The hand of providence. As the sun set on the yeshivot of Sura and Pumbedita in Babylonia, the world was desolate, and it seemed that Torah was set to be forgotten. But then, precisely at this critical time, the Torah spread to all corners of the earth, reaching as far as Egypt and Africa, Spain and France. For God left us a remnant, the 4 captives. Divine providence arranged that these men be taken captive and sold as slaves in the 4 corners of the world, in order to spread Torah even to distant lands. Anyone who looks with open eyes will see that this jug of oil, the Torah, has not yet entered, for this miracle continues to repeat itself in our days. Just as the Jewish people are eternal, so is this jug of oil eternal. Moreover, the eternity of the Torah is the root of the eternity of the Jewish people.
So a personal tragedy became a historical turning point for the Jewish community. Fascinating stuff. So we see what we learn from this story of the 4 captives was a catalyst to the era of the Rishonim. What we know today as the Rishonim. When you study Talmud, we start with the Mishnah, the Talmud, and then we start going down the list. The Gaonim, the Rishonim, the Achronim. These are the different groups of rabbis in different eras that were constantly communicating, debating what the previous generation, what they had to say. So the Mishnah was set. The Talmud debated the Mishnah. The Gaonim debated the Talmud and the Mishnah. The Rishonim, which means the first ones, debated the Gaonim, Talmud, Mishnah. The Achronim debated the Rishonim, the Gaonim, the Talmud, and the Mishnah. Now, if you would walk into a study hall of the Talmud, what do you need? One book. You need the Talmud. The answer is no. I remember my teachers in yeshiva giving a class. They don't have lecturns. They have tables, dining room table size. They stand in the middle, maybe 40 books open in front of them, and they're pulling this one, and they're connecting the dots. This guy lived here, he didn't see where this guy lived, but this guy's here. And these guys are arguing about what? About what this guy says, if the other guy, what he meant. It's one big he said, she said. But you have to coordinate all these opinions, and that's the amazing exercise of studying Talmud. And we said this last time. Study Talmud is not one foot on the other on the beach, drinking your favorite margarita. It's sweaty, and you're leaning over the book, you're schwitzing, you're trying to figure it out, you're breaking your brains, you're debating, you're not sure, you are sure. This is how you study Talmud. This is how it's been happening for many, many years. So all these generational books are what they're doing is it's putting in writing the verbal conversations of each generation. The discussions within the study halls of each generation is later written down and then debated. So we get a chance to look at what they discuss, and it's eye-opening. Each one is leaning to one direction. This one was more Sephardic heritage, so he leaned here. This was more Ashkenazic, he leaned here. And debating every single law in the Torah. And that's what we have today. Different communities have different customs. And it's all, everyone still does Passover and everyone has a basic unifying the mitzvahs, etc. But there's many different opinions. So that's how it works. Okay, let's keep on going. So this is the story of the 4 captives, and we should recognize that this is a beautiful addition and turning point in Jewish history and how Jewish law was being transferred from generation to generation. All right, next story. Rabbi Meir of Rothenburg. This is probably one of the most famous stories of a Jewish captive, and the famous response that Rabbi Meir of Rothenburg had. We're going to watch a video to give us a little bit of a summary. You guys here online? Elizabeth, you hear?
Yes,
Audio? Yes, perfect.
I can hear you.
We don't have an exact year of birth for Meir of Rothenburg, which is very common in the medieval period. There were no birth certificates or other certificates. We believe he was born somewhere between 1215 and 1220 something. He was originally from Worms in the Rhineland, and that's where he is buried to this day, because there were not a lot of great scholars left in Germany at that particular time. Meir of Rothenburg went to France. He went to northern France, where he studied with a series of very important Tosafists, those who commented on the Talmud and on Rashi's commentary to the Talmud. That started in the mid-12th century. He got there somewhere, we know when he was there, he got there somewhere around 1230 or 40, again, depending on when he was born. And his most important teacher there was someone named Rabbi Yechiel of Paris. And that's important for a number of reasons, aside from Rabbi Yechiel being a great Torah scholar. Meir of Rothenburg was apparently in Paris when the Talmud was burned in the year 1242. That was the result of the so-called trial of the Talmud in 1240. Not that it was all disaster. There were plenty of good Torah study. And in that respect, Meir of Rothenburg took in this French Tosafist method of study of comparing texts and resolving texts. Rothenburg was not his original hometown. Rothenburg is in south central Germany. He seems to have gone there once he came back from northern France. Maharam very quickly becomes the Gadol Hador, the leading Torah scholar of his generation. Again, not just because there weren't many others, but he really distinguished himself. Already in the 1240s, the trial of the Talmud, which Maharam witnessed, it's the 1240s. As we move forward, the Jews in northern France are under tremendous economic pressure, meaning money's owed to them, debts are canceled, so their livelihoods are basically threatened to the core. There are physical persecutions, there are attempts at conversion. Again, the rulers, some of them try to provide some security, serving camerai, serfs of the chamber. The king will protect the Jews, but these protections, and France and Germany are a little different here, but these protections don't always hold up. And many of the questions that Maharam received were questions about things that happened during conversionary efforts. So again, on the basis of all the earlier persecutions, Maharam was not, in that sense, jumping ship. It was pikuach nefesh. Maharam believed that his life was in danger. Whether he knew somehow that he might be captured or something else is purely speculative. But in any case, Maharam begins, he leaves Germany. Apparently, Maharam was on the way to Israel. What we know for sure is that he moves eastward. He's in Germany, which is sort of the center of the Holy Roman Empire. As you move southeast, you get to Italy, right? The Alps, however you cross, however you go around. And apparently in 1286, this we have some contemporary documentation, Maharam, he apparently had stopped there to wait for others to come with him to follow. And Maharam was captured by agents of the Holy Roman Emperor, by agents of the King of Germany, who also had control of this area of Italy. Again, there are suggestions that somebody informed on Maharam or informed them that Maharam, again, great scholars had to travel incognito. You could ask the question, is this mainly anti-Semitism? Is this mainly economic? Is this mainly political? And the answer to that question is yes, all of the above. They were looking for the economic benefits. They were looking for the anti-Jewish benefits. They were looking for the political benefits, showing who's in charge. In any case, Maharam at that point is captured, and he is brought back by the Holy Roman Emperor to Germany, where he is put in at least one or two, maybe more, quote-unquote fortresses. These are not prisons in the Rikers Island sense, if I can say that. These are not prisons where you're treated horribly. He's a political prisoner. He's an economic prisoner. In other words, the capture was done so that the Jews would pay large sums of money to try to get Maharam out.
Okay, so the Maharam, as you kind of the whole story right there. So we find in text 5, this is actually written in 1615. There was a local Christian uprising against the Jewish communities there, which the synagogue in Worms was destroyed in 1615. Now, years later, the Jews went back and restored the synagogue, and when they restored the synagogue, they discovered that a lot of the writings were still intact, that were stored there. This following text was a text that was found by the restoration of the synagogue, and it seems to be written at the same period when this originally happened. When this originally happened, it seems like this text was describing the story of the Maharam trying to escape, etc. Judy, please, would you read text 5?
Daring Dash. Our teacher, Rabbi Meir of Rothenburg, son of Rabbi Baruch of blessed memory, set out on a journey to cross the sea along with his household, daughters, son-in-law, and all his possessions. He arrived at a city situated among the high mountains, known as Lombardisch Gebirge, Lombard Alps in German. He intended to stay there until all those traveling with him would gather there. Suddenly, the wicked bishop of Basel rode down from Spain through the city. Together with him was a wicked Jewish apostate named Neff. Neff recognized our teacher and informed the bishop. This caused Count Einhard of Gorizia, the lord of that city, to arrest him on the 4th day of Tammuz in the year 46 of the 6th millennium and hand him over to King Rudolph.
So we have here the life story of Rabbi Meir. He fled northern Italy, where they waited for other families, discovered and handed over to King Rudolph. And what his decision to do was pretty remarkable. King Rudolph demanded a large ransom for the leader of the Jewish community. He was the leader of the Jewish community. And he demanded a large ransom. And Rabbi Meir refused to allow the community to pay for his ransom, to pay to free him. Why? Because he felt, we'll see in a moment, we'll read some of these texts. Well, he felt that by doing so, it's going to encourage more and more Jewish people to be taken captive, and more Jewish leaders to be taken captive. So what we're going to do here that we didn't do last time is we're going to look at some of the texts of when do we and when don't we pay a ransom. So let's see. Let's see text 6 quickly. Maybe Judy, if you could read text 6 also, it's a short one.
Of societal concern. For the sake of society at large, captives are not redeemed for more than their actual monetary value. The reason for this is so that captors will not settle additional captives,
So I guess that makes sense, right?
will not seize.
Let's see, yeah, right, I guess that makes sense, right? If you're gonna start paying more and more and more, I mean, we're gonna take this discussion to contemporary times at the end of this class. We're gonna try to, I know that's where your brain all went. But we're going to discuss it at the end of this class. We're gonna try to bring some more contemporary things, and the answer is it's not simple. Rabbi Meir's situation was not a life and death situation. His situation was a money situation. He wasn't in prison, he was held, whatever. He was given food, he was able to even write Torah thoughts and spread it to the community. So it is different, but I'm just cautioning you not to jump to conclusions. But the point there is that there's broader implications to just paying a ransom. What is the actual value? How is the actual value of a person measured according to Jewish law? You're only allowed to pay what the going rate is. Well, how do you rate what the going rate is? Right? The answer is that back then it was a real business, and there's a rate. You want a man this size, this strong, is this, a woman, this, a kid, this. Those are going rate within the realm of going rate. But if you're going to start demanding many, many more times that could be problematic. So he was obviously the greatest scholar of the time. He was renowned. Today, when we study Talmud, we all the time quote Rabbi Meir Rottenberg, all the time. He was a scholar that his works live today in Jewish houses of study all over the world. So his stature was definitely very tempting for the Jewish community, and he had his disciple was arguing with him. And he said, I want to pay the ransom. We can pay it. We have it. And he didn't let him. He says, am I the rabbi still in the community? He says, yes. So if I'm the rabbi, you have to listen to me. And if you have to listen to me, then I'm not going to pay it. Then I don't let you pay it. So he says, you're right. Can't. The rabbi says, the rabbi says. One of them would listen to the rabbi around here, like they listen to the rabbi around there. But that's a separate, Anyway.
Do we have to pay?
You pay my ransom? Okay, no, fine.
You have to pay your rent?
To pay my ransom, my rent, I don't know. How much am I worth? Mike, I'll take $100, I think, is a good enough. All right, let's go. Text number 7, Dale, please.
Refusing ransom. I heard about Rabbi Meir of Rothenburg, who was imprisoned in the fortress of Enshisheim for several years, and the ruler demanded a large sum from the communities for his release. The communities wished to ransom Rabbi Meir, but he refused, arguing that captives should not be deemed ordinary worth. His reasoning must have been that if the communities would ransom him, it may incentivize other rulers to do the same and hold other prominent Torah scholars hostage for exorbitant ransom. Eventually, the wealth of the entire Jewish people would not suffice to ransom them, and the Torah would be forgotten among the Jewish people. Here is the proof that he was right. After this case, the rulers stopped seizing sages and holding them.
There you go. There's the point. What?
It's funny where it's always about expediency, usefulness, and then not usefulness of the Jews in the community.
Right. Well, yeah, that's an ongoing
Tough
theme.
story.
Yeah. But if we look here, we'll see he remained in prison for 7 years. He passed away in prison. He remained in prison for 7 years. While he was in prison, he was still able to continue writing his responsa and Talmud, where he was still able to teach. Not teach in person, but was able to write and get things in and out. In the next text, this is actually a text. Yeah, go ahead.
It's that the ruler didn't override that and start killing people who didn't supply the ransom. There was no
Right.
talk back, which is interesting.
It is interesting, yeah. The next text this is Rabbi Rothenberg himself writing about his captivity. Let's see, is it Raisa? Raisa, yes, please, text 8.
When I'm released to safety, I will gladly ensure that you receive a copy of my commentary on therein, and Taharot. During my imprisonment, I have not forgotten my Creator, and I have remained devoted to His Torah and a fear of heaven. From the soul obedient to your command, the improvised and individuals forgotten for all goodness, the downtrodden doormat, once known as Meir, the son of Rabbi Baruch, of blessed memory.
So Rabbi Baruch died in 1293. You think that the story ended there, but no. His death, the king there still kept his body for another 14 years until it was redeemed by a fellow named Alexander Wimpin, which was in 1307, a wealthy Jew from Frankfurt named Alexander Wimpin. He finally succeeded in brokering a deal and getting his release. So when he got his release, he was buried in the city of Worms, where he originated from, where he was born, and he was buried right next to Alexander Wimpin. And you see a picture on the screen here. These two are at the actual graves in Worms, Germany, of Reb Meir Rothenberg, and right next to him, Alexander Wimpin. Being buried next to a great sage is a great honor, from the greatest of honors, and being buried on the right side of that sage is also considered a great honor in our history. You'll see, even if you go to Israel today, you have like sages that are in like grave sites, and right next to them, there's somebody also of great stature. So here you have Reb Meir Rothenberg, and on the right is this Alexander Wimpin. Now, if you want, we can read the inscriptions of the gravestones of both of them. Of Reb Meir Rothenberg and Alexander Wimpin, what was written in 1307 on their graves 800 years ago. 818 years ago.
Mhm.
Look at my math skills. Very nice. Okay, Marcia, please.
9A or 9. Gravestone inscription. This monument is for our master and teacher, Rabbi Meir, son of Rabbi Baruch. He was captured by the king of the Roman Empire on the 4th day of Tammuz in the year 46 of the 6th millennium. He passed away in captivity on the 19th of Iyar in the year 53. He was not given a proper burial until the 14th of Adar in the year 67 of the 6th millennium.
1307. Very good. Okay, let's do one more. Marcia, please.
This gravestone was carved and erected for the benefactor Rabbi Alexander, son of Rabbi Solomon, who passed away on the 5th day of the week, and was buried on the 11th of Tishrei in the year 68 of the 6th millennium, 1307. His heart desired, and God granted him the opportunity to perform a great mitzvah and redeem our master and teacher, Rabbi Meir, son of Rabbi Baruch, who had been in captivity for several years after his death, until the benefactor arose and redeemed him. He merited to be buried at Rabbi Meir's right side. May it be God's will that he be placed at the Rabbi Meir's side in the Garden of Eden with the righteous of the world. Amen. Amen.
Amen, Selah. Beautiful. So you see, he was buried in Adar. Rabbi Rothenberg was buried in Adar, and this Alexander Wimpin passed away 7 months later. So he passed away 7 months later and was buried next to Mayor Rothenberg. Yes, Mike.
The terminology year 48 of the of the 6th millennium, it might be a little surprising.
Yeah.
Could you take a minute on that?
Yeah. So it's going according to the Jewish calendar. Thank you, Mike. It's going according to the Jewish calendar. So right now we are in the year 5785 in the Jewish calendar. This was in the year, let's say the year of the burial, right? So the 14th of Adar in the year 67 of the 6th millennium. That means 5 0. Yeah, 0. Yeah. 6 7. Does that add up?
Yeah. So
do the math. Hold on.
The point is, like we do in centuries, we're in the 21st century of the regular calendar, although the year is 2025. So
Right.
the 6th millennium of the Jewish calendar begins with a 5.
With a 5, correct. Right. So 1 second, 2025 minus, let's do this quickly, guys, 1307 equals 718 years. I said 818? I did a mistake. I'm not so good at math, all right? 718. All right, let's see the other way around if it works. 5,785 minus 5067 equals 718. Checks out. The calculator is better at math than me. Could you imagine? Okay, so good. So this is the story of Rabbi Meir of Rothenburg and the benefactor that rescued his body, not himself. He was in captivity for 7 years, followed by another 14 years. The Jewish community did not get his body out until this Alexander Wimpin, with the connections and the money, was able to get his body out, and then they're buried side by side in Worms, Germany. But the reality is that the Jewish community, after Rabbi Meir of Rothenburg's captivity, and after he passed away in the year, Meir of Rothenburg passed away in the year 1293, so 1298, 5 years later, there was the Rheinfleisch massacre throughout Germany, and there you can read about it online. It was when the Christian leaders at the time were turning and blaming the Jewish people, similar to what happened in France a few years earlier, and it basically caused community after community to be completely dismantled and ravaged. And there was some of the greatest scholars at the time. Rabbi Meir's brother, Rabbi Avraham, was murdered. His disciple, Rabbi Mordechai ben Hillel, one of Rabbi Meir's top students. The Jewish community still existed in Germany till modern times. But the height of the Jewish community in Germany, it peaked with Rabbi Meir's life. When he passed away, it started going downhill. It still existed throughout, but it started going downhill. So, what we learned from this story is he heroically placed his people ahead of himself. And he saw the bigger picture. And yes, he wanted to return home, obviously return to his community, but he said that this is not the right decision because at the big scale, other people will be taken captive and suffer as well. Okay. What do you guys think? Good stuff so far? Good stuff. Okay, the next story is going to be a different story because we're not going to be dealing with an individual or some individuals. We're going to be dealing with thousands and thousands of people taken hostage. A lot of people, and the story, as we all know, does anyone know about the Chmelnytsky massacre in the year 1648, 1649? Today, one of the reasons why we fast on Tisha B'Av is because the Chmelnytsky massacre began 1648, began on Tisha B'Av. Actually, it actually began on that same date. So, we're going to have to get a little bit of a background. Let's read a little paragraph, and then we'll go into some of the details to give a back picture of what we're dealing with here. Beth, please, if you can read on page 166, Captives Crisis of 1648.
The previous two sagas concerned an individual and a small group of individuals. The following episode is a saga of mass captivity that involved thousands of Jews working an international Jewish rescue effort.
So again, we're dealing with the whole community. What happened? In 1648, there were hundreds of thousands of Jews living in what is today Ukraine. At the time, obviously Ukraine did not exist, but it was the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. Now you'll see on your screen, on your books, on page 166, there's a map. All those southern cities there were all cities of major Jewish communities and the site of major Jewish massacres in 1648, 1649. So what's the backstory? The backstory is as follows. The south part of Ukraine was ruled by, for the most part, by the Cossacks. The Cossacks were a militant group. They lived in the south part of Ukraine, and south of the border in Turkish territory, there were the Tartars. The Tartars were a Muslim group, but the commonality between the Cossacks and the Tartars were that they loved violence. They were they were for the most part not nomads, but they had zero ethics. They would go from town to town. They did as they wish. Now the Tartars, a big part of their business was slavery, selling people into slavery. You got to supply the food chain. You got to supply the demand. That was one of the big things they did, and they would send people They would capture people, go into towns, capture some men and women, destroy, steal, kill, rape, do what they gotta do, and send a lot of these people down to Istanbul, which was then Constantinople, to the slave trade down there. And these slave trade was very wide ranging. They supplied slaves even cross Atlantic, for some reports of that. But what the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, what they arranged was with the Cossacks, again living in the south part of their border, was that they paid them to guard the border, and to hold back on the Tartars or anyone else who would be coming from the south. And they also had a relationship with the Tartars where they would pay like protection money. Now, in 1648, the Tartars and the Cossacks, led by Khmelnytsky, they became increasingly impatient with the Polish-Lithuanian government, and they decided to bind together and to push back against the Poles. So this broke out in 1648. This pact was created, and they decided to go from town to town, not only with the primary focus to crush the Polish-Lithuanian government. They went after the priests, they went after the government officials. The Jewish people at the time were, because they were trusted by the government there, they were also in charge of the taxation of the communities. So if someone had to collect taxes, the government employed the Jewish community, in some communities, to collect the taxes. So naturally, when you're trying to push back against the government and the Jews are in between, they're going to feel the brunt of it. But they didn't need that excuse to hate the Jews. All right, these people were ruthless killers, and what happened what happened afterwards was a wave of the most horrific violence of the communities of that area, where before this there was some sort of functionality within the community. There was structure, there was infrastructure, there was Jewish businesses, things were doing well. And after this, the communities of that entire Eastern Europe was completely devastated, and never really recovered until about 100 years later, the Baal Shem Tov came on the scene and recognized that for 100 years, there's been no study. The Jewish community just knew that they were Jewish based on the fact that they knew their ancestors were Jewish. Everyone had trauma up the wazoo. There was a few people who had the ability to study Torah, but there was a select few, maybe 1 or 2, 3% of the population. They did not spread it with the masses. The Baal Shem Tov saw the scene. The Baal Shem Tov said, if we do not engage and show the common folk, the farmer, these people don't have any luxury to study. Education is a luxury. If you're trying to figure out how you're going to eat that day, who has time for education? So they went to Yom Kippur, they went to a little Passover, they don't know how to read, they hold the book upside down. There's a famous story of the Baal Shem Tov that it came to Yom Kippur, and the Baal Shem Tov was about to start the service on Yom Kippur, the holiest day, and in the back of the room, a kid screams, "Kukariku," like a chicken call. And everyone's like, "Shh, what are you doing? The Baal Shem Tov, we're praying, it's Yom Kippur, the holiest day of the year." I just said, let him. That's all he knows. It's a genuine cry of the soul to God. He doesn't know how to read. He doesn't know what an aleph looks like. Doesn't know what a bet looks like. He doesn't even know what to do. He comes to synagogue and he wants to connect with God, and all he got is he knows how to make a perfect chicken sound. Teenager, little kid, probably orphan, probably trauma, probably starved. Then Baal Shem Tov saw the inner joy, the inner purity of a Jewish person. Baal Shem Tov had eyes. There's amazing things we can say about the Baal Shem Tov. We're kind of like skipping over, but I heard a story Friday about the Baal Shem Tov. I'll share it and we'll get back to the lesson. The Baal Shem Tov was an orphan at a very young age I think 3, from both of his parents. She had no parents. Now, what happens when there's orphans in the community? You have a couple that takes them all in. Now, this couple didn't. They had their own children, but they were extremely poor. They were also the teacher in town. So when you can imagine the vibe at home. Was it happy? Was it lively? Was it loving? Barely. Nothing. So the Baal Shem Tov was a sensitive soul, and he didn't want to go to school. He had no interest in going to school. So one day, he ran into the forest, and he decided he was done. He's not going. He sat in the forest. He just started crying, and he was crying, his situation. He was a young kid. He had no parents. He was, with foreign the people he didn't know in a very hostile place with no food, barely anything to eat, hardly sleeping. Sanitary conditions were horrible. These people who never saw a smile, never saw any love. This was his situation. And he was crying bitterly, and he fell asleep by the tree. When he fell asleep by the tree, a little while later, he opens his eyes, and the way he describes it, there's a beautiful, holy man standing next to him. Beautiful, majestic beard. And he calls him Srulik. Hashem's name is Yisrael Baal Shem, Yisrael. Yisrael looks like the nickname for Yisrael. He says, Srulik, come with me. He walks in the night, says, what are you doing here? He says, I just have such a dire situation, such a horrible condition I'm in. So this old man gave him a blessing. I want to give you a blessing that you should have eyes to see. Eyes to see. He brought him back. He says, go and study. Do your best. When he walked back into the room where he was studying, he looked around the room, and he all of a sudden says, what is this person giving me a blessing for eyes to see? And instead of seeing the situation the way it is, he started thinking about seeing things the way they are under the current, under the veneer. And he said, this person, you know why she's so nervous? This foster mother, you know why she's so nervous? Because she hasn't had anything to eat today. She hasn't been looking her best for the longest time. She's been suffering. She's been in fights with her husband from day one. There's no love. This is why she's acting this way. Poor woman. And then the guy who has been all broken and horrible and hitting them and was horrible to them, he says, you know why this guy, he also lost his parents when he was a young kid. And he also went through the hardest things. He also was hungry. And he started seeing things from below the surface. And that's the Baal Shem Tov, the way he looked at the rest of his life. Instead of being judgmental, he was being curious. Instead of jumping to conclusions, he wanted to know what's going on behind the scenes. Why is this and this person have this tendency? And he was able to open up. And that look on the world is what shaped the Hasidic movement. That we don't look at things on the surface, we look at things below the surface. And the Rebbe, my teacher, my mentor, my guide in life, the Rebbe passed away in 1994, but his teaching still guide me today. The Rebbe taught me the same thing. You see a person, don't look at them the way they are today with all their issues. If they're harming another person, you got to make that stop. But if someone is going through issues, instead of being judgmental, be curious. Say, why is this the case? Let's see what's going on behind the scenes. So that blessing the Baal Shem Tov got to be able to see. I bless you with eyes to see, with this idea to see below the surface. Beautiful story. But anyway, getting back to our story before the Baal Shem Tov, before maybe the happier times. This is called the massacre of Tach V'Tat. Tach V'Tat is the year Taf Chet and Taf Tet, which is basically the Hebrew words, which is basically the 1648, 1649 massacre. Was by far the worst wave of anti-Semitic violence until the Holocaust. That means the destruction of the temple. You have 1600 years later, 1648, 1649, and then the Holocaust. These were by far the most barbaric, the most horrific wave of anti-Semitism, of murder, of rape, of carnage, that existed throughout our history. So the survivors of this atrocity, so the Cossacks and the Tartars kind of divided in how they dealt with each community. The Cossacks came in and they had a few goals. Get any valuable they can, kill as many people they can, rape, and move on. The Tartars were a little bit more sophisticated. They said, hey, we got some valuable people here. Why should we go and kill them? Let's take them. Let's sell them. And what they did was they started gathering thousands of people, of Jewish people, and figuring out a system to get them all to where? To Constantinople. And what was the plan in Constantinople? Obviously, sell them as slaves. So here we're dealing with a situation where you have thousands of Jewish people ending up in captivity, ending up in slavery, and being sold on the slave market. Let's see text number 10. Were we holding? Mohammed, please. Yes, text 10.
Lament of this section. Who can account all our troubles? That all the diseases were in and
Mohammed, just 1 second. I should have given a small introduction to this text. This was written by Rabbi Avram Ashkenazi. He was a resident of Vladimir. Vladimir was a city in that same area, that region of Ukraine. And he basically describes the advances of the Cossacks and the Tartars. And then eventually in August and September of 1648, where he talks about his unshakable faith in God. But this is actually a person that was witnessing everything that was going on. So go ahead.
If all the seas were ink and the leaves quills, they would not suffice without all our afflictions. Who can account how the dust entered the region of Volhynia and burdened all our properties along with our synagogues and tore us clothes and killed all the righteous who are our towns. Now you, God, Lord of our fathers, look down and see our cry. Seek redemption for our exile. Walk amidst our camps, reveal the end of days when we will be cleansed. God, return our captive.
So this is written by Rabbi Ashkenazi. Obviously, he's alluding to the massacre that was going on, but also redeem our captives because they witnessed how thousands of Jews were being taken away in chains. This next text is from Rabbi Yaakov Kopel Margolis of Ludmir, the same city of Rabbi Ashkenazi, and he was actually taken captive. Different than Rabbi Ashkenazi, he was actually taken captive. And let's see his accounts. He wrote a poem, which is this next text, text 11. Barry, please.
Hapless horror, the vicissitudes of time had carried me away, the evil degree that is befallen us in the land of hope. We received the results of heaven's decrees for us, those destined for the sword, to the sword, those destined for starvation, to starvation, and those destined for captivity, to captivity. The verse lists the fates in progressive order of severity, but captivity includes all of the previously mentioned suffering. I was among the exiles taken captive with my son and daughter. We were led into exile in iron chains. My feet were bound in chains. They drove me and my children away from my family, from my father's house, and from my homeland to a foreign land. I have been banished from the inheritance of the holy. I said in my heart, it's my fears. Who is with me? Who will be my tower of strength? Who in the heavens will spread his hands to take me, to draw me from the raging waters? Who do I have on foreign soil who will give me refuge and shelter? Who will stand by me and help me like a friend, to be like a brother to me?
So what the fate of these captives was what, as we said, Constantinople, where the slave trade there was booming. And obviously, in Constantinople as well, there's many Jewish people that came from in 1492 and the years following. Where did a lot of the people end up? Last week we spoke about Donna Garcia. Where did she end up eventually? She ended up where? In Constantinople. So there was a huge Sephardic community in Constantinople. And the description we have from Rabbi Ashkenazi describing the extraordinary generosity of Jewish women in Istanbul. This is a quote. The women of Istanbul removed the bands from their waists to pay for ransom and took the ransomed slaves into their homes, where they supported them for a long time. The Jewish people here, let's read the next text, text 12. Name, please, sorry. Marla, please. Yes, text 12.
God granted me mercy at the hands of virtuous people, the noblemen of the land, who are generous, righteous, and pious people, descendants of saintly ancestors, professional folk who are authentic descendants of the compassionate nation, the members of the holy Jewish community of Constantinople. Most prominent among them were the perfect sages who studied Torah day and night, and who perform acts of kindness with the children of Israel who are being held by harsh masters. These people redeemed me. May their homes be peaceful. May there be peace in their bastions and life forevermore.
So as thousands of captives and refugees were ending up and were flooding the city of Constantinople, the Jewish community was trying to keep up. The host, there's something very special about when one Jewish person sees another Jewish person in need. We have this in our blood. We got to take care of each other because throughout the generations, they smack this around. So there's two key figures that worked on this international Jewish on this international effort to try to rescue more and more Jews. What was happening is the Jewish community of Constantinople was running out of money to pay the ransom. We'll find out soon how much that ransom was. Running out of money to support them once they were out. People didn't have jobs, they didn't speak the language. And by the way, these two Jewish communities didn't speak the same language. One spoke Ladino, one spoke Yiddish. How are they going to talk to each other? But they were our brothers and sisters. And they sold everything they had to take care of each other. And there was two great rabbis, they were brothers. Names are Yaakov Aboab and Yosef Aboab, that wrote a letter in text 13 appealing to the Jewish communities throughout Frankfurt to Venice, to all these rabbis in these communities, saying how the burden is too much. We need more. We need you to send money. These are souls at risk. Let's see text 13.
Jack.
Thank you, Jack. Please, text 13.
We address ourselves to the two commanders Israel's armies. Distinguished in mitzvah and good deeds, renowned and praised individuals, unique in their excellence. The illustrious Rabbi Zanbil Haz and the illustrious Rabbi Ber Oppenheim. May they live with strength and peace. Our souls grieve as we heard cries for help coming from our brethren, abducted from distant lands. Down the city of Constantinople. The poor pressed captives from Poland, groaning in need. Load after load arrives in Constantinople, strained and distraught. Constantinople community is unable to continue paying for their ransom because their kindness and righteousness have already reached beyond the heavens. They report that they have redeemed over 1,500 people, expending a vast fortune of over 150,000 reals. What can they do now for the remaining survivors? The fresh arrivals who are impoverished and in chains, suffering under the hands of harsh masters. For the sum of the donations from these places is insufficient for their redemption. Seeing that the esteemed individuals responsible for redemption of captives have turned to us, we feel that it is our duty to compose this letter, the entreaties to your honors, asking that you seize this great mitzvah. We ask you to strive with generous hearts and fear of God to arrange that the leaders of our holy community, of your holy community, send money to the city of Constantinople as quickly as possible. You may send it with whichever messenger you choose through our city, Venice. Hasten the redemption of multitude whose eyes look out desperately for your charity. The matter cannot stand delay. Faithful giver of rewards, who sows righteousness and brings forth salvation, will repay your honors for your toil and effort. This mitzvah, the double payment of the blessings and successes. May God raise you high and protect you with great strength and peace. Venice, the 4th of Tasmuz, 1651, from your loyal friends who already stand to serve you, Yaakov and Yosef Abal.
This is a plea to the Jewish communities of Amsterdam, Frankfurt, Venice, and they responded. They responded generously. At the end, they saved about 4,000 to 6,000 people that arrived in Constantinople. It wasn't obviously the amount of Jews that perished in the 1648-1649 massacre is not 100% confirmed. I believe it's a debate between 20,000 and 100,000, but I'm not sure. But this is just the people who were massacred. Forget about the people displaced and impoverished and misplaced and everything else. But what you had here, each person that had to be ransomed, it was 100 reals. How much was 100 reals? So the context, 100 reals is equivalent to a 26-day wages, 26 days of wages of a master carpenter in Venice at the time. Not just a regular guy, a master carpenter works 26 days, 100 reals. What is that in English? I don't know, but it's up there. And as you see, they rescued 1,500 Jews, but they paid paid big money. We see in text 14 from Edward Sieur de la Croix. He was a French diplomat that wrote astonishingly about what he witnessed, the Jewish generosity in Constantinople. So Elizabeth, online, perhaps maybe you can read text 14.
Sure. Amongst themselves, the Jews are extremely charitable. They take great care of the poor, adding to the price of meat 1 sol per pound. By the end of the year, this makes a large sum, which is used for feeding and supporting the poor, as well as ransoming Jewish slaves whom the Turks and the Tartars take in addition to the Poles. As a result, there are no Jews in the Sultan's galleys apart from those convicted of crimes.
So why did they do this? Why did the Jews of Constantinople give everything that they didn't have it as bad as that? They were able to, make it work. But yet they emptied their treasure chests. They emptied their jewelry. They took off their earrings, they sold it, and they rescued one after another after another. I think it's an incredible display of the unbreakable bond of our people. And these people, again, did not speak the same language. They were completely different customs, different music, different foods. Yes, but they were bound by what? By Torah, by mitzvah. We have the same Torah from Mount Sinai, same 10 Commandments. So this is an unbreakable, deep, deep bond we have. Let's see text 15, how a contemporary historian explains this concept. Noel, do you have a book? Would you like to read text 15?
I do, yes. The connection between Jews derived from the Torah. Without that, the connection between the Sephardi Jews of the Mediterranean world and the Ashkenazi Jews of Eastern Europe would have been tenuous. After all, they spoke different languages, practiced different rituals and customs, had different historical experiences from at least the 10th century, and understood their place in the world in different ways. It was their understanding of belonging to a single religiously defined people, chosen by God and forged by the experience at Mount Sinai, that allowed the Jews of the 17th century to feel connected with each other over great distances.
There you go. Torah and mitzvah strengthen the Jewish unity. This is what keeps us together. This was kept us alive. The fact that we didn't live in Israel, we didn't have a homeland, we were scattered around the world. Torah and mitzvah kept us alive. We have 7 minutes left, but we started 5 minutes late. So maybe we have 12 minutes left, perhaps, if my math is right. But what we're going to do is we're going to now try to bring this conversation a little bit contemporary. Let's see where this takes us. I know the other two online don't have a book, so we'll go back to Shayla, please. Contemporary hostages, let's see.
The secret of unity. The connection between.
One more, the next one.
Oh.
Right here.
The above episodes related to the Jewish value of redeeming captives demonstrated the lengths to which Jewish communities have historically extended themselves in securing the liberation of captives. From that historical perspective, we now turn to briefly address the contemporary question of hostage negotiations for the release of Jews taken captive by terrorist groups.
So I know we came to discuss history here, but we can't help to connect some dots. Today, I think most Western countries refuse to negotiate with terrorists. I think that's been changed in the last few months, but okay. Hostages live today in great danger. So we have to take all these things into account. But before we go into the slide, let's read exercise 4.2. Joan, please.
Okay, the exercise you're talking about.
Yes, please, the exercise.
The state of that one.
Yes, please.
The state of Israel faces contemporary hostage scenarios whereby individuals are taken captives by terrorist groups. Do you think it is possible to derive answers from the classic Jewish sources presented above regarding the question of Israel's response to hostage taking?
Okay, so instead of doing the exercise, here's what we're going to do. If you look at text, if you look at page 178 in your books, you'll see that there are 5 topics to weigh, or 5 items to weigh when trying to solve this question. Okay, defining overs, which means how do we how do we define overpaying? What does that mean? That's our first question we have to figure out if you want to apply this wisdom to today's world. The next thing we have to figure out is the danger to the lives of the hostages. You know, as we said, Mayor Rothenberg, his life wasn't in danger. So maybe he, in his situation, he could have said, you know, leave me here, I'm good to go, because his life was not at risk. There was no one trying to kill him. They just wanted money. So he said, I'll be here, I'll be uncomfortable, I'll be a little hungry, I'll sleep on a stone, I'll sleep on the floor, I'll be all right. Maybe if someone's life's at risk, it's a different story. Correct? Another option is, and obviously in contemporary times, a lot of these terrorist groups have murderous ideologies. It's not a question about price paying lower, paying higher. It's a different reality. Okay, the next thing is that in a lot of these deals, we're freeing terrorists with that. These are people that are unapologetically have had these are people who are not rehabilitated. And as we see, unfortunately, in the last war, it was started by a man named Yahya Sinwar, Yamach Shemai, and he was released in 2011 with 1,000 other convicted terrorists with what? With the freed Gilad Shalit. So maybe that's another thing to take into account. Do we, yes, let's say the person his life is at risk. And let's say, you know, we're going to pay above. When you're paying above, you're releasing someone who might cause later damage, right?
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
In contemporary time, is there any, like, consideration of these
Individuals?
religious values when these decisions are made by the government?
Which is not,
I mean, is that playing any role?
do they take Torah wisdom in account when they're making decisions?
Because they certainly.
Don't ask that question.
So it's like a second.
I think the political world is their primary focus. I think that's the problem. That's in today's reality. Mike, you agree? Okay.
Beautiful page.
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay, but let's keep on going. The other question is the state of war, which means you're not allowed to risk your life, right? You're not allowed to put your life on the line according to Torah, unless it's a state of war. So maybe, even though there's a hostage which is at risk, but maybe it's a state of war, and therefore the individual, the collective, becomes more important than the individual, right? Again, these are all things we have to discuss. So we have here, generally, most Western countries refuse to negotiate with terrorists. Number two, hostage lives are in direct danger in today's world. Freeing terrorists creates a future risk to human life, no question. Regular laws of freeing hostages may not apply to the state of war which we have right now. There's another thing, as the Rebbe said, that Israel has to take a stronger stance with some of its neighbors. Now, a lot of its neighbors have innocent people living in it, which is true. And at the same time, when you're dealing with some of these, let's say the 6-Day War, the Rebbe was frustrated that right after the 6-Day War, there were discussions about giving everything back already, the day later. So what that does is, if we're here in Eretz Yisrael, because we believe this is the land that our ancestors lived for thousands of years, which it's true, from the day Joshua entered the land of Israel, 3,300 years ago, just about, 3,000, a little less than 3,300 years ago, there's always been Jewish people in the land of Israel. Some more, some less, in greater times and worse times. We pray 3 times a day for the last 2,000 years. We pray 3 times a day. There's 19 blessings we make in the prayer. 7 out of the 19 are what? Return us to Jerusalem, return us to Israel. Throughout all the years of diaspora, what's the one request we have? At the end of every Passover Seder, what do we say? Next year in Jerusalem. So this is the land of our people, no question. That doesn't mean that the people who want to live there can live there. You don't have to be Jewish to live there. Everyone can live there. But when the moment you live there with this call of Zionism, which by the way, today somehow turned into a dirty word, but you say every day in prayer for the last 2,000 years, return us to Zion, return us to Zion. But leaving that all aside, this idea of us wanting to return, being there, that is the reason for the state of Israel being created in 1948, not because we're a modern state that just decided to pop up on the map. No, we were here forever. You dig the ground, you pull out words in Hebrew from 2,000 years ago, literally. They have discoveries of coins and things from Hebrew. Everything's Hebrew. It's the same people, the same customs, the same Passover, the same Sukkot, the same everything. And then the day after you're settling there, you want to give it back? What's your message to the world? Your message to the world is, I don't think we actually belong here. You know what? Maybe not. And the Rebbe was very frustrated. The Rebbe wrote a letter in 1958 to Ben Gurion. The Rebbe said, I'm a new rabbi that just took on the Chabad leadership in Brooklyn, New York. You owe me nothing. There's a printed letter. You can Google it. You can find the letter. But the Rebbe says, I don't think that your claim of modern Zionism is going to help the Jewish people settling the land of Israel. Forget about the spiritual. You don't believe in God? No problem. I'll give it to you. Don't believe in God. It's fine. He didn't believe. Ben Gurion was an atheist. He didn't believe in God. But the Rebbe said it's just a stupid thing to say because your whole claim is now baseless. And that's the issue the issue that we have today with the legitimacy of the state of Israel being in that area is a result of the way the state was founded. Am I saying political, maybe controversial stuff? Perhaps. But this as a religious man, this is what I believe. We believed in this land way before 1948, way before Theodor Herzl, way before the Zionist movement. This is our people. This is our land. There's a trifecta. God, the Jewish people, the land of Israel. A Jew cannot fully observe the Torah if they're not in the land of Israel. Do you know that? Agricultural laws only apply in the land of Israel. There's dozens of laws in the Torah, do's and don'ts, that we don't do if we're not in Israel. So for a Jew to be a Jew fully, you have to be in the land of Israel. This is a key part of our existence. So the fact that Ben Gurion decided, the Rebbe wrote a very sharp letter. The Rebbe says, take it or leave it. But I think it's a wrong approach. It's a wrong angle to make a claim why we belong. There was Jewish people that were there forever. My brother-in-law, my sister, I only have one sister, and I only made one shidduch in my life, one match, and that's my sister's shidduch, to my friend, Nachum Greenwald.
We met them.
No, they never came. Actually, the only family member that hasn't been here is my sister, but she'll get her. But his father is 9th generation born in Jerusalem, going back 150, 200 years. Born in Jerusalem. In other words, under the Ottomans ruled Israel for 500 years, 400 years, 500 years, 1512 to 1923, right around there. That's how many years? 400 something years. So this is so throughout that whole time there are Jewish people living in Israel, no problem. So anyway, we're going up a rabbit hole here. Let's finish the last text 16. Ron, please.
Captives prayer. Our brethren, the entire Jewish people, we are in distress and captivity, whether on the sea or on dry land. May Hashem have mercy on them and deliver them from distress to relief, from darkness to light, and from subjugation to redemption. Now speedily and soon, and let us say amen.
Amen.
We say this every week. We used to at least before we lost the papers, but we should get back into it. This is a prayer where we say, God, bring everyone back home in peace and harmony, and the temperatures in that area of the world should be toned down, with evil eradicated off the face of the earth. Yes, Mike. Are you gonna mess me up now?
I am.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, not mess you up. What do you say, throw you in the deep end?
Yeah.
When we do this on Shabbat.
Yeah.
You sing this to a marvelous, strong tune.
Yeah.
Melody.
Yeah. Want to play it? We can play it. I'm not going to sing it, but we can play it. I can get it. I can find it online. Listen, I'm good at a lot of things. I have good looks and all, but my voice is not it's not where I'm good at, you know.
But that's what we.
I disagree entirely.
Oh wow. Okay. Well, I'll find it online. How about that? You know. Or Mike, maybe.
Oh, yeah, like.
Anyway, let's play the end video. Hold on 1 second. Okay, 1 second. Oops.
Lesson 4, Heroes and Hostages.
Do you hear, Elizabeth?
Narratives. 1. In the 10th century, 4 great rabbis were captured by pirates on the Mediterranean Sea. They were redeemed by communities in Egypt, Tunisia, and Spain. These rabbis revolutionized the study of Torah in these communities, allowing the communities to become spiritually self-sufficient and ushering in a new era of Jewish scholarship and history. 2. Rabbi Meir of Rottenburg was the leading rabbinic authority in Germany in the 13th century. As government persecution of the Jews worsened, he led a daring attempt to escape Germany and settle in the land of Israel. Imprisoned by King Rudolf I of Germany and held for ransom, Rabbi Meir prevented the community from paying the requested sum, citing a Talmudic enactment against overpaying for captives in order to disincentivize future hostage-taking. 3. In 1648, the Cossacks and Tatars launched a joint revolt against the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth that ruled Ukraine. Tens of thousands of Jews were killed in anti-Semitic pogroms, and thousands of Jews were taken captive for sale on the Istanbul slave market. The Jews of Istanbul launched an international Jewish relief effort and successfully ransomed the large majority of the captives. General points. 1. Jewish law deems redeeming captives the greatest mitzvah possible. However, some restrictions are placed on the price that can be paid for ransom in order to avoid incentivizing future hostage-taking. 2. Jewish communities around the world have been historically able to mobilize on behalf of redeeming their captive brethren because they have felt a deep connection and responsibility for each other. The roots of this unity are the shared Torah and mitzvot. 3. Jewish law and history provide experience and guidance for dealing with hostage situations. This background arms us with insight and perspective for navigating the complex dilemmas raised by contemporary terrorist hostage situations.
Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you all very much for joining us for this course. I think it was informative, it was inspiring, it was uplifting, it teaches us where we come from. We don't just fall off the face of the earth. When we walk around the world, we're midgets, but we're standing on the shoulders of giants, the giants that came before us. And that's what this class is all about. I want to just play one more video quickly, which is the National Jewish Retreat happening in DC next month. Now, the National Jewish Retreat is JLI's actual retreat that they do once a year, where the greatest and most charismatic and most beautiful looking rabbis and scholars and teachers, men and women alike, come together to give lectures and blow you off your feet. Right, Dale?
1,000%.
Dale's been there a few times, right?
Yes.
With Albert. So it's coming to DC this year. Because we're local, normally you have to pay for it to be there, room and board and this and that. Because we're local, they have day arrangements and certain discounts for local things. So I'm going to play a short clip, like a minute and a half, of this National Jewish Retreat. And it'll have a website where you can go and try to figure out if this is for you and or your spouse. So check it out.
Is grandma here too?
Grandma is not on the Zoom. You're asking on the Zoom, you mean?
Yeah.
Continue to share this keynote window using SharePlay. I guess it is. Here we go.
National Jewish Retreat. Thank you for having me here. It's an honor.
This privilege that I have to stand here.
This is amazing, huh? Studying the peace of our sages' wisdom, the knowledge of this magnitude is something that's immeasurable. That's gourmet, kosher food that you're ever going to find. Changed, and we changed the moment we decide to change. The most important moment in your life is the moment you are in now.
What is it that I, and only I, can offer being connected to my Jewish identity and Jewish values is something real and relatable?
There's a lot about living a richer life, about laughing about this. Place burst into life.
We can work together to create a future that we will be proud of. The luminous Jewish world of tomorrow. If you sign up, it's going to be best with the real life, so can't wait to see you there.
jretreat.com, jretreat.com.